We've reached the top of the hour, so I'm delighted to welcome everyone formally to today's webinar, The Best Ways to Design a Quality Scorecard. Oh, that's the wrong title. Well, we'll just move on. Delighted to keeping everyone on their toes, just checking everyone's still awake. I'm delighted to welcome to today's webinar two brilliant speakers who we've had on quite a few webinars, webinar pros as it were. So Daniel Ord from OmniTouch International, welcome to today's webinar.
Thank you, Rachel.
For people who haven't come across you on our websites or our webinars, do you want to give yourself a bit of an introduction?
Sure, no problem. I'm a 30-year veteran of the industry, which I'm very proud of. I fell into it by accident, which I think is a relatively universal story. And about 20 years ago, I set up a company where we do primarily training around contact center, customer experience, and we also do a lot of mystery shopper. And I'll share some of those examples in my talk today.
Brilliant, looking forward to it. And delighted to welcome our second speaker, Tom Vanderwell from Intelligentics. Welcome back, Tom. Delighted to have you here.
Thank you, Rachel. It's great to be here.
And for people who also have missed all our webinars, would you like to give an introduction to yourself as well?
Sure. Like Daniel, I'm long time in the QA business, been doing it for over 25 years. Intelligentics actually works on data-driven quality assessment. We have a research team that focuses on customer satisfaction research, quality assessment, both as a third-party provider and helping companies do it themselves, and training and coaching.
Brilliant. Well, welcome back both. And just a reminder, we are running our discussion in our chat room this week. It's on callcenterhelper.com/chat, or you can use our short term. You just type in cch.chat into your browser. It is in a separate window, but you can put them side by side in your screen, or a lot of people are using their mobile phones to join in the chat. A few added bonuses of being in the chat room. You can download a copy of both our speaker slides today. You just click this link up here, and you can join in our quiz that will be between our two speakers' presentations using the buttons below. Another bonus of being in the chat room is that you can share your best tips using hashtag tip to share a tip, or hashtag question for a question, and the best one will win a bottle of champagne, box of chocolates, or an Amazon gift card, depending on what works best for you. We are taking a recording of today's webinar, and that will be available later on this afternoon on callcenterhelper.com/recorded-webinars. So before we get into the presentations, I'm going to launch a quick poll. So let me do this. And the question is, how would your advisors rate your quality scoring system? Is it 5 stars, excellent and consistent? Is it 4 stars, above average? 3 stars, is it average? 2 stars, below average? Or 1 star, poor and inconsistent? Tom, what do you think is going to come out on this one?
I'm actually going to say we're going to end up somewhere between 3 and 4.
Daniel, would you agree with that? Yeah, I think 3 or 4, because I think we're dealing with a self-selected audience coming into a webinar. So clearly, I think that the overall performance would be higher in this group.
Fab. Well, I will share the results. This is from 120 people. So yeah, 51% say 3 stars average, 30% say 4 stars above average. Then it goes to 2 stars with 14%, 5 stars 5%, and nobody is saying 1 stars, poor and inconsistent. So I think both of you were right to put your bets on where it was. So now delighted to come to the point in the agenda to hand over to our first speaker, to Daniel Ord. I will make you the presenter.
Thank you, Rachel. Give me 1 second here. And we are off to the races. So
perfect.
Give me 1 second. So Rachel, when you guys came up with the title, I always look at the title to kind of guide me on what the content will be. And the word that stood out for me was the word smarter. And so what I've done with this short presentation is I've come up with 7 ideas on how to make your QA program. I hope a bit smarter. So we're going to walk through these one by one. So here we go. Number one. Now, when people typically come to me or in a workshop, they say, Dan, how can I improve my QA practices? I get questions like, how many calls or chats should I be doing? Or if I'm coaching an agent, what do I do if they don't agree with the feedback and they push back against that feedback? And those are important questions. The comment I'd make is those things happen further upstream. That's further down the line on the process. There's actually something else that comes first. And when you look at the term quality assurance, the first word is quality. And when you're defining or setting up your quality assurance program, the very first step you need to do is define quality. So when I say define quality, you have to sit down and be able to describe what will quality look like around here? What will it feel like around here? If my boss came to me and said, what kind of quality do you guys deliver? I would be able to answer that question. Now we'll go a little bit deeper into that in a couple of slides, but let me tell you a mystery shopper story. And this particular story comes from the book Outside In. It's a great book. And it's about a US-based company called Office Depot, and they sell office supplies in kind of large warehouse environments. And the story is this: the customer feedback results from their surveys weren't very good. The scores were low. So the senior management team said, oh dear, we're not getting great feedback scores in our various outlets. Why don't we engage a mystery shopper company to come in and mystery shop those outlets? And they did, but here's what happened. The customer sat scores continued to stay low, but the mystery shopper scores were fantastic, all in the high 90s. So of course the CEO and the board are sitting around going, this doesn't make any sense because our mystery shoppers are telling us we're great, but our real customers are telling us we're not. And this is a very common problem that you see sometimes in contact center quality assurance programs or company quality assurance programs. There's a big disconnect between the quality standards that have been selected to measure quality and what customers truly feel about the experience. In this case, their experience at Office Depot. And again, this happens all the time. When I ask contact center people in various workshops, where did you get your quality standards? There's usually three answers. The first one is, I actually don't know. When I joined, they were already here, and we just keep using the same ones for years. The next one is, well, we did work on it a few years ago, and we haven't done much with it yet. And then a third set is, we're changing, but we'd like to know what the process is to change. So I think we heard in the poll that people out there have already been looking at changing their quality standards, and I think that's great. But my point here with what I'll call lesson one or smart thing number one is remember that your quality assurance program begins with quality. You have to define quality first. And I think what you'll find is as you do these steps at the beginning better, that stuff that comes further down the line will go better as well. So let's carry on here. I think all contact center agents or anybody in customer service has a challenge. And I'm going to shut up for a second and let the audience read this. So for me, I go to a contact center agent working somewhere and I'll say, hey, can you tell me what kind of quality you deliver around here? And they're like, Dan, I have no idea what you're even asking me. So if they can't answer that question, it's going to be very hard for them to deliver this meaningful experience that everyone talks about. So here's the test I would do if I were running a contact center today. I would literally just take 10 agents, do it one by one, don't do it in a group. And I would say, hey, Cindy, hey, Albert, can you tell me in 1, 2, or 3 sentences, not more than 1, 2, or 3 sentences, what kind of service do we deliver around here? What kind of quality do we deliver around here? Sometimes I compare it to ice cream. If you go into an ice cream store, you're going to have 87 different flavors of ice cream. So do we deliver rum raisin service around here? Do we deliver mocha almond kind of service around here? Now, if you do this with 10 agents and they all pretty much tell you the same thing, well, congratulations, and I don't even know why you're on this webinar. You're a pro already, you can disconnect. But my experience has been that when people actually go out and talk to their agents and say, what kind of quality do we deliver around here, the agents really struggle, and that's the sign of a quality assurance program challenge. So the next slide is, so what can we do to help our agents? Well, here we go. A service delivery vision helps. Now, when I talk to people, they say, Dan, I'm not quite sure. I've never heard of a service delivery vision before. Is that the same thing as a company vision? And I'll say, no. It's not the same thing as a company vision. Your company vision may guide the crafting of your service delivery vision, but a service delivery vision is really a 1 or 2 or 3 sentence statement that describes exactly what kind of service we deliver around here. It's kind of what we were just talking about with the agents as to can they describe the kind of service they deliver around here. Now, why don't we look at this picture here? I found this completely by accident on Google Images, and I really like it. It's for a company obviously called John Roberts Spa. And I love this. Now, they probably don't call it a service delivery vision, but as soon as I saw it on Google Images, I was like, that's what that is. Everybody that works in this spa, they know that their job is to be the best part of our guest day. Now, I just love that. I think that's really great. And they've beefed it up even a little bit more. If you look at the bottom, they've come up with 3 principles. Technical expertise, making an emotional connection with customers, surprise and delight. So if you're a new employee and you're hired at John Roberts Spa and you go through their onboarding or orientation program and they teach you this, you know exactly what kind of service it is you're going to deliver. You know exactly what flavor of ice cream you're going to hand over to the customer across the counter. And I think that's very powerful. By the way, if I were John Roberts Spa and I wanted to hire a mystery shopper company, I would give them this picture and say, please mystery shop this. Don't come up with your own standards. Those don't have relevance to our customers. Please mystery shop and see if we are in fact personalizing the experience, if we are in fact giving more. So this is the example of a service delivery vision. And this is the second smart thing I think people can do. And one more thing I'm going to say here is what some people do is they skip this entirely and they go to the process of selecting performance standards, the behaviors that the agents are going to bring to life. But if you had a service delivery vision first, it's going to be a lot easier to pick those performance standards. So we're going to take a look at that now. So number 3. Now, in this discussion, I'm using the term performance standard, but sometimes when I talk to agents, I call this behaviors. What are the behaviors I want you to bring to life on the live chat? What are the behaviors I want you to bring to life in an email? And I agree with Tom 100%. You have to do this for every one of the channels that you offer. Now, there are 3 different categories of inputs here. And let me walk through each one and then give you an example for each one as well. At the upper left-hand corner, you have the vision, mission, values, CX strategy. I call this the who are we input. As a company, who are we? What do we stand for? What do we tell people we are? If I went to your company website, what would you be telling me about you? In the old days when we did a lot of mystery shopper, the first thing I would do before we decided what the standards were is we would research the company's website to see what they said about themselves. Now let me give you a contact center example here. We worked with a hotel reservations company. They had a performance standard called branded language. So they had a hotel brand that they considered to be refreshing, and they had come up with some vocabulary that they called refreshing vocabulary. And they put that in their training program with agents, and they asked their agents that when customers called about that specific hotel brand to please use the refreshing language. So that would go under that first box, vision, mission, value, CX strategy. Your service delivery vision would go here as well. The second input box, your customer expectations. You're serving certain types of customers. What do they expect from you? And obviously, your results here, your knowledge here is going to come from your qualitative research and your quantitative research. It is not okay to sit around the boardroom table and say, we assume the customer wants this. We assume the customer wants that. I call that 1973 customer service. You have to do the research, qualitative, quantitative, probably another webinar for another day. One thing I found for contact centers that are serving, let's say, more senior customers, which I think I'm getting close, they value patience. That came out in the research. They really appreciate patience, not speeding up when you talk, being willing to repeat what you had to say. So that's an example of a performance standard from customer expectations. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's a box for regulatory. This is really for those of you out there that work in industries that have regulations or regulatory authorities overseeing you and what you do. So for example, if you're in the financial industry, you probably are dealing with vulnerable customers and you may have some performance standards around how you deal with vulnerable customers. But I think when you're coming up with your performance standards and you've got your small group of people working on this across marketing and contact center and customer experience, it can be very powerful to examine each one of these inputs and make sure that your overall standard mix addresses each and every one of these. Who are we? Who are they? And what do the regulators require from us? So, all right. By the way, one last thing before I move on, there is no magic set of industry standard performance standards. They don't exist. So what works for a hospital is not going to work for a credit card company. What works for an airline is probably not going to work for Social Security. So it's very important to take the time and effort to go through this exercise properly for your particular organization. So that's number 3. Now, number 4, I'm going to take a quick detour into customer experience. And some of you CX people out there, you probably recognize this. If you don't, I hope you find it useful. It's called the customer experience pyramid. And basically, the research shows that a customer evaluates their experience with you across 3 different elements. And let me give an example and work through the pyramid. Let's pretend I here in Germany have to help my mom or my mother-in-law get a new mobile phone plan. So I call the mobile phone company here in Germany and say, hey, I need to get my mother-in-law a new mobile phone plan. Well, the bottom of the pyramid is meets needs. That's basically saying, could I get my mother a new mobile phone plan? Did they give me a solution? Did I get what I need? That's obviously kind of the entry ticket to the game here, but did they meet my needs? That's the first element. The second element is, how easy or hard was it for me to get what I needed? And this is where that whole customer effort discussion comes in, and I love that. So what if later on I tell my partner, look, I called for mom and got the mobile phone plan, and here's the great news. It was so easy. They had the information at their fingertips. They knew it straight away. I didn't have to repeat anything. They gave me everything I want. Then we would say it's easy. On the other hand, if I say, oh, I had to repeat myself multiple times, they transfer me around to this department and that department, I keyed in her mobile number into the IVR and then they made me say it again, then you would say that's not so easy. And I think particularly for contact centers, this ease thing, this effort thing is a very big deal. And that's something worth looking at. And then the top of the pyramid, in this diagram, it says enjoyable. Some people also like to use the word emotion, which is, after I hang up from that call with the mobile phone center, how did I feel? Did I feel reassured? God, I know I got the right plan for mom. That's awesome. Did I feel apprehensive? Oh, I'm not so sure I got the right plan. I mean, it seemed like it. Was I frustrated? How did I, what was the emotion that I experienced? And CX people will tell you that at least 50% of how a customer perceives their interaction and experience with your organization has to do with the emotion. So I found it very useful that when I start to gather together all my different performance standards from the 3 inputs we talked about in the last slide, I kind of filter them also through this pyramid to make sure I'm addressing the meets needs, the ease, and the emotion, which I think is a very big deal. Kind of plan what kind of emotional outcome you'd like your customers to have. I think this is a very powerful paradigm. And I'll close by saying this. Just last year, we were doing mystery shopper on chatbots. There is such a thing. And the client had said to us, can you please do a customer experience mystery shopper? And I said, sure, we can. This is the model that we used. So when we issued the report on the chatbots, we talked about, did it meet the needs? How easy or not easy was it to do? And how did the mystery shopper feel by going through this? So it's a very powerful paradigm. I hope you can use it. Number 5. Now, to the gentleman out there that said that they were doing some weighting, I think it was good and excellent or average. Absolutely. Not every single performance standard on that form you're going to create has equal weight, because now you have a batch of performance standards you've worked on. You're going to have to lay them out onto some kind of monitoring form. So for me, as an example, a tone of voice is always going to matter more than a greeting. For me, empathy in a live chat is always going to matter more than punctuation. So the way I signal that to my agents is by applying a little bit more weight. So instead of saying every single standard on that form has equal weight, I might weight up tone of voice. Just theoretically, maybe tone of voice is 25% of the weightage. Maybe empathy, especially in the days we're all going through right now, maybe that's 35% of the weightage. Now, I agree with Tom. You don't change this every day or every week. That'll be very chaotic. But it's very interesting to weight things. And I want to tell you a story of a call center we work with in the Mediterranean. And it was run mostly by engineers. And they said, Dan, we do our call listening and we do our scoring, but all the scores are so high, we've gone to decimal places. So for example, when we listen to Andre's call, he gets 93.2165. Oh my God. And when we listen to her call, she gets 94.3641. And they looked at me and said, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? And I said, yeah, guys, that's really ridiculous. If you have to separate your high performers from your low performers by decimal point, this, one, you have grade inflation. There's no way everybody's delivering 94, 95, or 96. And two, I have a feeling you're weighting all your standards equally. So a greeting has the same weightage as, let's say, empathy or tone of voice. And they said, absolutely. So over a 6-month period, they followed this practice of re-weighting their standards. They modeled it out. All the agent scores dropped from the high 90s, point XXX, down to the mid 70s. But they managed that expectation, and now moving from the 70s up to the 80s was a dramatic improvement in customer experience, to the point that the satisfaction levels went up, the compliment letters went up, and all the things great contact center managers like. So I 100% agree, not everything has equal weight. Look at your form and use the power of weighting to guide you here. That's number 5. Number 6 is an important one, and let me explain what I mean by this. When you sit with an agent and you talk to them specifically about their call or their live chat or their email, you're literally doing one of two things. You're either helping them or you're keeping score. Now let me explain what I mean by that. If you have a form, whether it's electronic or whether it's a hard copy form, and there is a score on there, no matter how nice you are and how friendly you are and how great a bond you have with your agent, you are scoring them. Because most agents, when they see you approaching them with that little piece of paper, what's the thing they want to know? I think you all know. They want to know, what is my score? And most call centers have a minimum. So if you hit 85 and above, you pass. 85 below, and you don't. So if you say, well, you got 86, it's all over. You're done. They don't need to listen anymore. They passed. And remember, if you're holding a score, and this sounds tough, and that's why I use this picture, you're judging them. Because when you give a score to someone, you're judging them. You're the professor. You're giving some kind of grade. You're taking a position of power, which means you're putting them in the subservient position. It's very, very difficult to coach to a score. Now, with that said, scoring is important. People deserve to know how they're doing. If you're taking a university class, you're going to take an exam at the end of the class, and that is going to tell you how you did in the class. So I'm not anti-score. I just want people to realize you're not really helping someone when you give them a score. You're just letting them know how they did on that particular call. Now, let me show you the other side. The other side is helping. Helping sounds like this. Hi, Cindy, I listened to your call. I'd like to talk to you about it. By the way, you'll notice I have no score here. I'm your trusted advisor. And I just want to talk to you about the 1, 2, or 3 things I think you could keep up that you're doing really well already. For example, the way you articulated that solution. And I want to talk to you about the 1, 2, or 3 things you can improve. It's very, very focused, and there's no score involved. What you'll find is when you talk to an agent without a score involved, there isn't you're more powerful and they're less powerful. It's an equal transition. You're truly a coach here. And here's the scenario. I think leading contact centers are using scoring and helping. They see the power and relevance of both, which is what I see as well. You need to score and you need to help. I think the more traditional or the not so successful centers, they rely almost exclusively on scoring, and then they wonder why agents are pushing back so much and not really growing in terms of quality, because handing someone a scorecard is not a behavioral change dynamic, but helping someone on a regular basis is a change dynamic for a human. So, and one other thing I'd like to say before we go to the last point here, the more you help someone, the better they score. I mean, that just makes sense, doesn't it? So if you have a team leader and she's constantly helping David improve in 1 or 2 or 3 particular areas, and she's helping him literally every day. Maybe he's new or he's been struggling. By the time, let's say, your quality assurance people or whoever you have doing the scoring come along and do the scoring, that score will be better. It's no different than saying if you study more for an exam and get more help studying for the exam, your exam result will be better. So remember, it's not helping or scoring, it's actually both. But just remember, when you bring a score over, you're scoring, you're judging. When you don't bring a score over, you're helping. And that's what I've always called it. And that takes me to the last point, because you can't have a discussion on QA without getting into how many. It's just not possible, and I would get all sorts of bad comments and so on and so forth. Just kidding. I think a couple of things. The first thing is, don't worry about confidence level or confidence interval here, because you're never going to be able to do enough to be statistically viable. It's fun learning how to use statistical calendars and doing confidence levels and intervals, but that doesn't really apply here because the quantity will be way too high for you to ever afford to do so many. And let me say this, I think we have to change the question. It's not about how many. I break it into 2 different questions. How many helping are you doing per month? How many scoring are you doing per month? So let me tackle each one. On how many helping should you do each month? When I do classes with team leaders, I always say, look, at minimum, and even I make a weird sound there when I say at minimum, because at minimum truly is minimum. You should be talking to every agent that works for you at least 1 time per week in a helping manner. There's no score here. If you can't meet every agent that works for you 1 time a week, my question is, where are you spending your time? And why haven't we made more time for you to help agents? Because that's where the quality is going to come through. Now, some team leaders have said to me, well, Dan, I try and help every agent almost every day or every other day. And I say, wow, that's fantastic. Good for you. And you can tell because the quality and camaraderie of those people is much higher. But when it comes to helping, I find that the strongest bond tends to be between the team leader and the agent, especially when the team leader is helping in a very focused way without a score. Now, how many scoring should you do a month? Please be careful of industry benchmarks. The reality is most people are doing, and Tom, I'm sure you can help out here. I see anywhere from 6 to 15 per agent per month. 6 a little bit on the low side, 15 a bit on the upper side. So if you truly had to quote unquote average this out, you typically are seeing about 10 per agent per month on a scoring basis. Now, some people say to me, but Dan, if my agent's taking, I don't know, 2,000 calls a month, is 10 really statistically viable? And I'll say, no, it isn't. But look at it more as an audit. And this is what I say to agents too. How many times is it okay to say, Mr. Smith, you're an idiot? Never. How many times is it okay to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Call back another day when I'm not here. The answer is never. It's never okay to interrupt anyone rudely. It's never okay not to seek the answer or the solution for the customer. So I don't get too concerned about the statistical viability here. I look at it as an audit. But again, I'm not auditing without the helping part. If all I do is audit but don't help, that's not very fair. But if I'm doing the auditing to make sure I know where your developmental needs are, and I'm also doing the helping, then I think I've got both sides of the coaching picture covered. So let's sum it all up. These were the 7 smart things. I hope some of them were smart for you. Maybe some of you are doing a lot of these already. Quality assurance begins with quality. You have to define what kind of quality you're going to deliver around here. A service delivery vision, which is point 2, is a very powerful way to do that. And one thing I like about the service delivery vision is adding those principles. I usually see 2 or 3 principles added. Number 3, when you're coming up with your performance standards, know your Number 4, contact centers talk about customer experience all the time these days. So it's helpful to use a customer experience paradigm, and that pyramid is very powerful. Needs, ease, and emotion. Very, very powerful. Number 5, as we covered in great detail, not every behavior has equal weight. So spend some time and energy to identify which should have more weight, have less weight. Number 6 is a very big deal because this is working with your agents. Just remember, you're either helping, that's when you don't use a score, or you're keeping score. And both have their value and both have their importance. You should be doing both. It's not one over the other. And number 7, I think the question on how many has to be rephrased. How many helping should you be doing? How many scoring should you be doing? And I'll close by saying this, and maybe it's just because of working with so many senior people over the years. What they'll say is, Dan, I don't really care how many they do as long as they achieve the outcome. So they have to do as many as they need to do to achieve the outcome. And to tie this whole thing together into one big package, remember your service delivery vision to be the best part of our guest day. I will do as many helping and coaching, or forgive me, helping and scoring as I need to until I know that all the people working for me know that their job is to be the best part of my guest day, at least for John Roberts Spa. So with that, guys, I want to say thank you very much. I think Call Center Helper gives out my contact details and so forth here. If anything isn't clear or you want to follow up and let me know how it went. And Rachel, with that said, and Tom, with that said, I hope I kept well within time. Okay, Rachel?
Slightly over, but we'll forgive you.
Okay, all right.
So just to let you know, we're now coming to our quiz. So you just need to go to callcenterhelper.com/chat or CCH chat. And while you're in the chat room, maybe you could share in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Daniel's presentation? Brilliant presentation. Thank you, Daniel. My key takeaways were that your quality assurance program begins with quality. You know, check what all your agents' definitions are. Look into creating a service delivery vision. I know that on our briefing, I definitely kind of wanted it to think more of a mission statement, but no, it's a service delivery one. And you're either helping or you're keeping score. You know, make sure you know which side you're on. So thank you very much for that. So I think we are, let me just Alt tab to my one. So we've got about half the people in the chat room. Just a reminder, so we will be coming to our quiz in a moment. So yeah, you just need to go to callcenterhelper.com/chat. So I am going to begin. So the first question is, according to Call Center Helper research, the most commonly used quality tool is A, paper-based forms, B, spreadsheets, C, specialized quality platforms, or D, analytics tools. So you just need to vote on the A, B, C, D buttons at the bottom. So yep, we'll wait on a few people to share their things. Final few seconds, so get your answer in now. Yep. Nope, still going up quickly. So, yep, the answer was spreadsheets. Most people got that one. Spreadsheets are still used by 51.1% of contact centers, but specialized quality platforms are catching up as they're now used by 49.3% of contact centers. So, yeah. Which of the following did Daniel not list as part of the customer experience pyramid? Was it A, enjoyable, B, easy, C, knowledgeable, or D, meets needs? So A, enjoyable, B, easy, C, knowledgeable, or D, meets needs? Let's find out, Daniel, how many people were listening.
Oh dear, referendum already. Okay.
Fab. So last few coming in. Yes, most people, 44. So yeah, the correct answer was that it was knowledgeable. So it was taken from Forrester research. It says that good customer experiences are 3 things from the perspective of the customer: meets needs, easy, and enjoyable. Oh, change at the top. Let's see what happens. Final question. Which of the following can be bad practice in quality calibration sessions? Is it A, creating a combined scorecard, B, including advisors in sessions, C, looking for deviations in analyst scores, or D, appointing a calibration leader? So that's which of the following can be bad practice in quality calibration sessions? A, creating a combined scorecard. B, including advisors in sessions. C, looking for deviations in analyst scores. Or D, appointing a calibration leader. Just to remind you, you need to use the buttons, not type it into the chat room. So we've got a few more coming in. Last few seconds. We've got a few more who are taking part. Yep. So mixed bag, but the overriding one was creating a combined scorecard. Creating a combined scorecard in calibration sessions goes back to the rules of the playground. The people who have the loudest voices and the strongest opinions dictate the conversation. So that's why it's bad. And the winner is Motoko. So we will be in touch after the webinar with to get in touch. So yes, we will now head over to our chat room. It's been very busy, I can see, so the top tips and questions. So we've had an opinion in from Vicky who said, thank you for talking about weighting. It's a great point, and I'll be re-evaluating my grading system I'm currently using. So there you go, Daniel, already influencing people. Joe said, love this branded language, refresher in language idea. So Vicky's got a tip. For regulating performance standards of my agents, I coach one-on-one weekly call reviews with them so that they can listen into their calls and provide feedback of how they feel they did. Along with that, I have a grading system of each call reviewed for making sure we're hitting all the key points and providing a wow every time. Daniel, what are your thoughts on that one?
It sounds like she's doing the helping and the scoring here, so that's fabulous. Only one quick comment here is this letting agents listen to their own calls and provide feedback, that works very well for agents who know your expectations. For the ones who are new or don't yet know the expectations, try not to do that to them because it's a little scary. But for the ones who know your expectations and so on, it's a brilliant way to help. I love it, yeah.
Fab. So we've had a question in from Alex saying, do you think call center quality will need to adapt when normality returns? And if so, how? Tom, I don't know whether you want to take this one.
From my opinion, I think that everyone is going to have to adapt to what the pandemic and what the lockdowns have done to our customers' expectations and behaviors. And the companies that are going to be ahead are those who are going to be listening to their customers and adjusting their quality programs to measure the things that matter to those customers.
Thank you. So Kev Richardson has asked a question. Quality is amalgamated metric often representing a combination of CSAT, CX, process adherence, defined brand / company standards and compliance. What advice do you have for educating the C-level? Daniel, I don't know whether you had any thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I'm just curious to educate the C-level on what? I totally get that your final Q score, probably the one you're presenting at the end of the month, that's what we used to do. My advice would be, and I know it's just a quick piece here, is when you're doing that presentation for your senior people, let's say once a month, put your combined amalgamated metric as your last slide. Never open by saying our overall quality this month was 86, our overall quality, because then you lose them for the entire rest of the presentation. So if you're doing an amalgamated number, hold that to the very end and walk the senior management through, here's where the CSAT part. By the way, I would keep CSAT a little bit separate from quality. They're linked, but they're slightly different metrics, I think, that VOC stuff. But if you'd say, here's our process adherence, here's our defined compliance standards, here's this, and then it all builds up to your amalgamated number. And Kev Richardson one, I hope that's helpful to you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So we're actually going to go across to a poll now. So let me launch this one. And we're going to ask, what is your biggest challenge with quality scoring? You know, is it measuring the right things? Is it finding the time to assess contacts? Is it low trust in the process? Is it outdated technology? Or is it something else? And could you leave it in the chat room? So, Tom, I don't know what your thoughts, what do you think is the biggest challenge for people?
What I see in most of our clients' call centers are finding the time to assess contacts. It is a mundane process, and usually it is so many fires to put out in a contact center every day that taking the time to actually assess the calls gets put on the back burner and often never gets done.
Right, well, I think it's close to the top, so I will share the results. Actually, just changed in the last few seconds. So we've got 139 people voted. So yeah, 39% say measuring the right things, 34% say finding the time to assess contacts, 24% say outdated technology, and 3% say low trust in the process. So was that what you expected, Tom?
Yeah, and actually, you know, for me, finding the time to assess the context, I think it's right there as up above the top. Measuring the right things, I think, is the question that most, especially those who are actually designing the program, are struggling with. Are we measuring the right things, and are we listening for the right things? When it comes to actually carrying out the QA process, I think still finding time to do it is a big one.
And Rachel, I'd agree. I'd jump in and agree with Tom 100% here. The number one challenge is finding the time. I think in the audience, it sounds like we have here, again, advanced and self-selected and questioning, are we looking at the right things? I think that's why we see that high. But if you go out to the industry, the people not necessarily in this webinar, you're going to see finding time, which is why we had the whole discussion on statistical viability. If you can't even find the time to do 5 per agent per month, please don't worry about 95% confidence level. You'll never get there. So.
Fab, thank you. And yeah, handed the baton over to Tom, very seamless there. So if you wanted to take us through your ideas for smarter QA.
Absolutely happy to do so. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We have some things that overlap a little bit. Hopefully I'll be able to elucidate on Daniel's excellent presentation. He and I did not work together, but it's amazing how we come up with some of the same things, because there are just some common issues that we all deal with when it comes to quality assessment. While Daniel really focused in on the core of that quality assessment program, that often is what we think about always when we're talking about QA, that we're measuring all of our agents on a set standard, giving them feedback, coaching them to improve. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but when I talk about smarter QA, I want to give you some ideas for thinking outside the box and maybe enhancing your QA by doing a few things above and beyond what you might normally do. So let's get started. Ideas for smarter QA. Number one, and I've got 2 things that came up there. Sorry about that. Start with a one-time assessment. And this is specifically for those of you who may not have a quality program. You're thinking about getting started, or it's just something that I want to design this program, but we've never really done it before. What we find is that most contact centers have a lot of low-hanging fruit, and a one-time assessment of the whole team on a team level, looking for what are the big issues for the team, can give you some really strategic things to focus on while you are designing the ongoing program and getting it launched. It can be a one-time assessment, can be done very quickly, and can give you a lot of information that will be helpful in beginning the process. It also can be helpful for those of you that have a program but might want an outside opinion. A one-time assessment from an outside consulting agency like ourselves. What we find is that one of the number one things that people don't talk about in their contact center QA is bias, and I judge the quality of that call with the bias that I have towards that agent. And so that's something that having an one-time outside perspective coming in can open your eyes maybe to some things that might be a blind spot for you. The second thing, gather data to drive what you measure and how you weight it. So I'm going to pick up here on what Daniel shared with us, and I'm going to show you a pie chart here. This is an actual pie chart from one of our clients. The Intelligentix research team did a customer satisfaction research for this client, and of the 13 different dimensions of service that we tested, these are the 5 that came back. And so this is kind of what is really driving this company's satisfaction. And as Daniel said, it's it can vary differently from one company to another. So it's always important that you are listening to your customers and finding out what's driving it. So why is this important? In this case, we have resolution, knowledge, appropriate solutions. So is that lower level of Daniel's pyramid, right? The customer experience pyramid, did I get my needs met? Did I get my issue resolved? And as we all know, that's always the #1 driver of satisfaction. In this case, courtesy and friendliness, those soft skills are really important to this company's customers, about 20%. And then we have these 3 things, and you'll notice that the top there, ease of finding the phone number. And what we mean by that is it easy for the caller to say, the customer to say, hey, I need to call this company. Who do I call? Where's the number? Is it easy for me to find? Is it right there on the app, or is it right there on the front website that I can just click it or can quickly pull up my phone and be able to call it? Quickness in reaching a CSR. How long am I going to sit in queue? And then answers without transfers or holds. So in this case, they're saying, look, if you look at those 3 blue pie pieces, it's really about access, isn't it? I'm able to find the number, quickly get a hold of a human being, and get my resolution from that person quickly without being put on hold or transferred. Now, you may be noticing that some of these things are outside of the agent's control. They don't control how easy it is to find the phone number. They don't control maybe how quickness it is to reach the CSR, because they don't control staffing. But you need to know that your customer satisfaction is dependent on some of these things. So two things to bring out of this pie chart. #1, as you are weighting your quality assessment behaviors, all of the things that really relate to that customer's perception of, was the CSR knowledgeable? Did I get resolution? Did they give me the appropriate solution? If that is really what that behavior is driving, like the correctness of the answer or the confidence with which the agent provided the answer, those things are going to impact that big green piece. So you're going to want to weight those accordingly. If you've got soft skills that, I use courtesy words when I ask for their account number, I empathize or apologize, those things impact the customer's perception of the courtesy and friendliness. So you're going to want to have those a little bit less weight, but you still want it to overall come up to about 20% of that overall service score. And then when it comes to these access elements, again, quickness reaching CSR, that might be something outside of that call, but maybe you have a component of that quality score that says, all right, Mr. Agent, you know what? On average, productivity level is 100 calls a day. And your productivity level is you're only making 80 calls a day. So because you're not, you're not average, and you keep falling below that, we have customers sitting in queue longer. And so maybe there's a handicap that gets added to the quality score. Hey, when you're on the phone, you're doing a great job, but you're not taking enough calls and getting to enough customers, and that means that they're sitting there in queue. Or if you place the caller on hold, maybe there's an element of the scorecard that says, hey, why did you have to do that? Especially multiple times. If you had to transfer the caller, did you really have to transfer them, or were you just trying to get them on and off the phone? And those kinds of things can impact the quality score. So think about it in those terms. We also have clients that will kind of have, beyond the customers or the agent's quality assessment score, there might be a customer experience index, where things outside of that agent's control handicap the overall service index for that call based upon other factors. How long did that customer sit in queue? Did they have to be transferred? Those types, did their issue get resolved? And if it didn't get resolved, not because the agent couldn't do it, but because of something in the service delivery system, those things actually drop the customer experience score. So you have an agent score and a customer experience score that includes things outside of that agent's control. So hopefully this gives you some ideas about how you can weight items and find things in that affect the customer's satisfaction outside of that agent's behavior. Moving on. Number 3, in-depth assessment of situations driving customer dissatisfaction. Let me show you another chart. Let me explain this chart. Bear with me here. So we surveyed our clients' customers within 24 hours after they spoke to customer service. And we asked them, how many contacts did it take you to get your issue resolved? Then we looked at the overall satisfaction of those customers by what they reported. So over here on the left of the chart, 2018 in the gold bar here, 94.3% of customers who said, I got it done in one contact, were satisfied or very satisfied. About the same in 2019. Now you'll notice when it comes to the customers that said, it took me 2 contacts, in 2018, that number didn't drop a lot. There was still 91.4% satisfied, very satisfied. That's not a huge drop. But in 2018, when you got to 3 or more, it dropped all the way to only 74.5% of those customers were satisfied or very satisfied. The real story here is what happened in 1 year, and this is why you need to continue to listen to your customers, because their expectations change all the time. In 1 year, the impact on satisfaction increased greatly from going just from 1 contact to 2. Now, if it took me 2 contacts, only 77% were satisfied or very satisfied, and 3 or more dropped even more, only 56.5% satisfied or very satisfied. What does this mean? Well, if I am this call center, I'm going to say, you know what? We need to begin in our quality program identifying what are these situations that take 2 or 3 contacts where the customer has to call us back. The customer has to initiate another contact to get that issue resolved, because those are driving dissatisfaction. You can have a bunch of great QA scores, but if you've got situations where customers aren't getting their issue resolved and they're calling back 2 or 3 times to get something taken care of, that's driving dissatisfaction. A QA program can identify those things, have my eyes and ears open up for what are those situations that are driving those multi-contact situations, and I really want to dig in and do an assessment of just those calls so I can, in those situations, so I can figure out how do we improve that. Number 4, multi-channel assessments. We talked about that a little bit earlier. If you're doing email, you're doing chat, it's a great thing to make sure that you're doing QA for those things as well. And I find, especially with email, email assessments are actually very easy. Many of the things that you measure in a call are also measured in an email. Now, when it comes to obviously written communication, you also have to talk about standards for structure, punctuation, grammar, how important that is, and then what standard you're going to drive in those types of conversations. But if you're not doing multi-channel assessments, it's definitely something that you should be thinking about, depending on how many customers are utilizing that channel. We had a client just a few months, about a year ago, who, when we did the customer satisfaction research, what we found was satisfaction with phone calls was really pretty high. But when we asked customers their satisfaction, if they received, it was an email interaction, their satisfaction was really low. We quickly went in, did an assessment of 100 emails, and we immediately identified a handful of things, very simple things, that the team could do, and within 2 months, overall satisfaction with customer service increased 18 percentage points with those email customers. So it can really pay off to make sure that you're monitoring every channel your customer is using. Number 5, assess customer experience outside of the CSR's interaction. We had another client that their agents were doing a great job, had high QA scores, and I can tell you, I worked with them for a long time, they were good. The problem was, it was so hard for the customer to get to an agent that by the time they got to that agent, they were already dissatisfied. And there's only so much that that agent can do to satisfy them. Things like, how easy was it to find the number? What was my experience in getting to an agent? How easy was it to use the IVR? What's the queue music like? Am I using queue time effectively? How many times do I have to be transferred? Can my agent soft transfer a caller to the person they need to speak with? All of these things outside of an agent's control really impact satisfaction. And so think about the customer's experience from the moment they're looking for the phone number to the moment their issue is resolved, or even after the issue is resolved, and we follow up with them to make sure that they're okay. And make sure that your QA program is more than just what the agent said or didn't say. Do an assessment of specific call types. Well, what do you mean by that? Let's say that you know you have a specific scenario that really it drives dissatisfaction for your customer, or you have a certain call type that is very difficult for those for the agents to deal with. Rachel said that they're going to be doing a roundtable discussion on dealing with angry customers. That's the #1 issue CSRs struggle with, and it's the #1 thing I get asked to do training and coaching on. So one thing that you can do is identify them. You should probably take, in any of these scenarios, I would recommend no less than 30. Less than that, you can still get some good information from it. But if you really want to look at the problem as a whole, make sure that you're doing 30 or more. Let's listen to 30 scenarios with angry customers. What do we learn from this? How did we handle it? Who did well, who didn't do well? Those things can then be translated into training and coaching across the rest of the floor. This is where a secret shopper model can really help out as well. Let's say our agents are struggling when customers call in to return this item because of the way that vendor of that item deals with things. Well, then let's have a secret shopper. We put in a couple of dummy customers in our database, and then we have some people call with that same scenario several times across several agents and look at how they handled it and what's difficult about it and what's the best way to handle it. Unusually long calls and what drives them. Here's another thing that a lot of QA programs do not address, and it's another example of bias. When it comes to picking a call to assess, most QA people, whether it's a supervisor or whether it's a QA team, I don't want to QA that 20-minute call. I don't want to listen and assess that call that's 25 minutes long. I have a hard enough time getting them all done as it is. As a result, your QA results aren't really a reflection of the overall population of customer experiences. They oftentimes are, they reflect just those customer interactions that are an average of 3 to 5 minutes or whatever your QA team typically chooses. Well, and you're right, maybe we don't want to waste a lot of time with those long calls, but there's a reason why they're long. And maybe, we've got efficiency issues. So listen to some of those calls, just take some long calls, do them all in a one-time assessment, find out what you learned from them. Those multiple holds and transfers as well. Assess customer interactions outside of customer support. If you've got people that are touching your customers, like a credit department, a finance department, a sales department, they need to be measured as well because their interactions make a difference. Between official QA assessments, spot check key behaviors. That's about helping versus coaching. If you know that Agent Bob really needs to work on his apologies, between my weekly assessments, I'm just going to jack in and listen to a few calls just to listen. Did he apologize in appropriate ways? That can be a great way to have accountability without taking a lot of extra time. And finally, focus energy where it's going to make the most impact. If you've got great performers that over time, they are always your star performers, then monitor them less and focus your energies on those agents, those lower performers, those newer agents, where your time and energy is going to have the greatest impact. So I know we're getting close to the top of our, Rachel. There we go. That's my presentation.
Thank you very much for that, Tom. Yeah, if everyone could write in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about Tom's presentation in the chat room, that would be great. we will try to whistle through some of these questions, because there's lots, but we're not going to get to them all today, unfortunately. So Simone said, how do you incorporate QAs with KPIs without driving a culture where they're solely focused on whether they've achieved bonus instead of how the customer experience was? Daniel, I don't know if you've got a quick answer to this.
I'm just trying to decipher it a little bit.
Okay. Do we want to hand it over quickly to Tom, or should we move on?
I think that one thing that incentives can be very, very important. But if you that incentive, whether it's positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, becomes the driver of behavior, that can be counterproductive. So you got to be careful of that.
Yeah, and Rachel, here's my quick 2 cents. You don't pay people to do their job. An incentive is a reward for performance. And culturally, there's 2 norms: economic norms, social norms. You want to be doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and that's how people around here work. So that's a culture thing. So the first thing you have to do is look at whatever you're incentivizing and really ask yourself, am I paying people for what they should be doing? Yeah.
So we've had a tip in from Alex, who says, engage your frontline by including agents when calibrating what good looks like, not just keeping it exclusively for management and QA assessors. If they feel like they have input, they'll feel more like their own expectations. So final question, with more agents now working from home, how has this impacted customer experience, and has anyone seen a big drop in performance levels? Daniel, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, the quick answer here, and I think Tom may agree here, is if you're in the current period, a lot of centers are facing shortages. If you're facing shortages, we all know service level goes down, agent occupancy goes up, and when agent occupancy goes up for extended periods of time, quality will absolutely be impacted. The second thing is the percentage or volume of the difficult calls. The last stat I saw said they've gone from a normal average 10% of overall call volume across industries to about 20%. So you're dealing with more difficult customers, but that doesn't necessarily mean quality falls. It just means you're dealing with more difficult customers. And as Tom said, you have to bring out your managing difficult customer skills. And the last thing is, if you've moved agents from a center to home, you have a whole different set of challenges which are going to impact quality too. So I think it's to be a little bit expected right now.
Yeah, and Tom, I'm sure you'd agree.
Absolutely. And the reality is, when it comes to working from home, some agents will thrive in it, and you're going to have agents that really struggle with it. And that's just the reality. And so you have to be able to discern who is who and manage that expectation.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we've reached, well, we're slightly past our time, but if you could write in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? The winning tip is from Renee, who said, we don't share scores with agents any longer and only coach on behaviours. Scores are used for helping us recognise learning opportunities. So we will be in touch after the webinar. We have a survey, so if you could complete that, the replay and slides will be available on this afternoon. Next week, as Tom mentioned, we're doing our interactive roundtable. It is experimental on how to deal with angry or upset customers. You can find that on the link below. Slightly long, so I'm sure we'll be able to put it into the chat room. And I just want to say thank you so much to our 2 brilliant speakers today, to Daniel Ord from OmniTouch International. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thanks, Rachel. It was awesome.
Thank you. And to Tom Vanderwell from Intelligentix. Thank you so much for your presentation as well.
Thanks, Rachel. It's always good to be with you.
Fab. And we will be back next week. So we will see you then, hopefully. Goodbye from me.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, bye.
Thank you.